Beach's Motorcycle Adventures. Still here in August, sitting in the office because of COVID. That's right. We still can't go to Europe. We still can't go to Canada. Some of us can't even go to other states. So to fill in the blanks, we've got Beach's Audio Adventures. This wonderful little podcast here where we go all over the world and talk to all kinds of interesting people, motorcyclists mostly, like that famous one from the Great White North up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Mike Knott. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Robbie. How are we today?
Well, I don't know how we are. I know how I am. So speak for yourself for a moment.
I think we are good.
Excellent.
A little French in there. Oui.
Well, I'm sitting here on the river drinking my coffee, and it's a very pleasant day here. What's going on up there?
Nice. Roughly same. Just kind of hanging out. Coffee's a nice drink, but you know what's better is some 40 Creek whiskey, some very nice Canadian whiskey. And I've got some Fever Tree smoky ginger ale. It's a very nice combination. And I picked these two because it's kind of a mixture of Canadian and the UK. Fever Tree comes from the UK. And it's very much like our guest today, Stephanie Jeavons. Hi, Steph.
Hi, how you doing? I was going to say that was a really formal introduction. Stephanie. Nobody calls me Stephanie. Wow.
Well, we thought you'd be from the UK. It's a little more formal there.
Am I like in trouble or?
Stephanie Jeavons, you get down here.
Stephanie, step to the front.
Just don't use my middle name, whatever you do. I'm not even going to tell you what it is.
So, Steph, you're a world traveler, and you've written a few books now?
A couple of books, yeah. Just finished the second one, yeah.
And is it published? It's out?
It's well, actually, the official launch is this weekend. So, but I've already started posting things out. So anybody who's pre-ordered, they should get it in time for the launch on Friday. So, yeah. Sweet.
Well, we'll have to put a link on the podcast here for anybody looking for said book. I know I will be. I always especially in these times, I like a good read like that. So why don't you tell us a bit about your world travels?
Oh, okay. Well, where do I start?
Yeah, encapsulate it all into about 45 minutes here. Huh?
That's a very, very big question. Okay, so to give you a general gist of what I did, the thing I'm most sort of well known for, and what the book talks about is my trip around the world, which took 4 years. And I covered all 7 continents, including Antarctica. So it was meant to be a 18-month journey, which became 4 years for many, many reasons. And yeah, all 7 continents on a CRF 250L Honda.
Just a little guy.
Little guy, yeah. and you know, most people thought I was crazy going on that initially at first at that time, but loads of people are riding on smaller bikes these days. And
do you really think it was just the bike why they thought that you were crazy?
Well, I was crazy. Well, that's what I thought. Is that not the case? No.
Yeah, no, it must have been the bike. It's totally the bike. I've read about this different travelers such as yourself. Usually the women travelers, because you want something that you can pick up when you're by yourself, because you're going to be by yourself a lot of the time, and the bike's going to fall over, and you're going to need to get this thing erect again.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the reasons. And yeah, you know, people will say, well, it's all about technique, picking your bike up. And there are lots of techniques to pick a heavy bike up, of course. But after you've been riding for 12 hours in, say, 40-degree heat, it's upside down in a ditch. I want every opportunity, every help I can get to lift that bike, and a lighter bike makes sense. But also, you know, the places, as you're, for example, Asia, you know, going through India and places like that, then, you know, you're not going fast. There's animals, people, potholes. Why do you need more power than a 250, really? It's cheap to run, it's you know, reliable, so and it's not a burden, you know. It's just a nice playful bike, and it'll still do the speed limit. So yeah, it was a great choice. I have no regrets about the choice of bike. I think if I was to go again, I would probably choose something similar again.
Well, the other part of it, I guess, is that, as you're saying, to pick it up, there's different techniques, blah blah blah. But if you can avoid even having to get there, so a lighter bike, you can maybe catch it before it falls over. So you don't even have to do that.
Yeah, well, that's the plan. Although I did actually fall off on all 7 continents as well, so I'm pretty good at that.
But that's part of riding in places that are unusual and different, is that they do tend to end up to be difficult at times. If you're going anywhere that's interesting, you're going to be in places where the riding is interesting at times too, and challenging. So that just goes with the terrain, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when I had sort of long straight stretches, like across the prairies in Canada, for example, then yes, I did occasionally wish for a bigger bike. And and especially when it's windy as well, I found that you sort of getting blown around a bit more. And so there are a couple of extra challenges, but probably 90% of the time I was grateful for that little dirt bike. So yeah.
Well, like all vehicles, or maybe a little bit more so with motorcycles, it's always a compromise, and what compromises suit your needs the best.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And it's neat to not be blinded by the idea that you need X, Y, or Z to do the trip. I mean, you went out and did it, and you did it with what all kinds of people were telling you was an inappropriate motorcycle for the adventure. Just stepped aside from all of those armchair warriors and travelers. It's not a question of proving them wrong, but it's a question of you did what you wanted to do with the resources that you had. And that's really the important thing. This is what I've got. Yeah. I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, you've got to do what you feel comfortable with, and I think if I'd have listened to all the people, who offered advice or told me I was crazy or whatever, I never would have left home. So at the end of the day, you've just got to go with something. And I'd worked with Hondas before, and so I knew that it was what I wanted. Because it was just going to be reliable. It was going to be, this isn't an advert for Honda, but it's my brand. It's reliable. And it's, like I said, it was something that I could take in the sand as well as on the road and in the mud. And, I could take a dirt track up a mountain without thinking, oh, am I going to get stuck? Or, because I knew I could handle it, whatever the situation. So, yeah.
And I've seen often in those types of travels where motorcycles get loaded on, dugout canoes and loaded onto boats through manpower, because you say the Darien Gap, to get from here to there, you got to jump in a boat, and they don't have big honking cranes to lift the stuff. No, usually it's a group of guys kind of hucking it in there. So again, lighter the bike, it's easier for all around.
Yeah. So what you said about putting on a boat, that prime example of that was getting the bike onto Antarctica, because I had to put it into a small Zodiac, look at a 5-man Zodiac. And if I'd had a big bike, there's no way, well, I don't know, but I wouldn't have liked to chance it, because it was scary enough putting a small bike in. It only just fit on the sort of the front. What do you call the front of a boat again? What's one of that?
The bow. The
bow. That's it. I learned a lot about sailing, as you can tell.
And a lot of it's stuck, I can see.
Somewhere. And it's sort of, we put it on the bow and strapped her down. And I squeezed her into, hotel rooms, into breakfast rooms, anywhere to put her safe, where the locals were saying, oh no, you mustn't keep her outside, bring her in here and up the steps and whatever. So yeah, definitely a good bike.
How was the range on that bike?
I put a bigger tank on her, so it comes with a 7-liter tank, I think, and I put like a 15-liter. So she did, on a good day, about 250 miles, something like that, out of a tank. So not bad. And I carried a bladder as well, so where required. I mean, most places in the world these days have just generally got a fuel station somewhere within 250 miles, unless you're really far out there. And there were only a few places where I needed the bladder, but that was good enough otherwise.
So what did you do before you took your trip? What's the background that was there that you had to shed before you decided to hop on a motorbike and go around the world?
Well, just before my trip, I was running an off-road motorbike school. I wasn't the expert. That makes me sound like I'm some like pro rider or something. I'm really not. I learned to ride. So in 2008, I did an off-road trip in South Africa, having never ridden off-road before. And it frightened the life out of me. And I just thought, this is crazy. Most of the time I was thinking, we're going to die. And then I'm thinking, I can't wait for this is over. I'm going to die. And then by the end of it, I was thinking, wow, I survived. This is amazing. I want to do it again. And but I had a weekend of training from a guy who was a Dakar rider, and he said during that drunk, we were riding and training, but during the night, we were drinking beers and tequilas and whatever. And he said, having caught me after a couple of tequilas, I'd really love to set up an off-road motorbike school. And I said, well, why don't you? And let's do it together. And he was like, okay, let's do it together. I said, okay, when I get back from Africa, we're going to set up an off-road school together. This was me 2 tequilas down, or 3 tequilas maybe. It's usually my optimum time to catch me on anything is 3 tequilas down. And when I got back from Africa 2 weeks later, the first phone call I got was from him saying, right, when are we setting up this off-road school then? And and so I was like, oh, right, okay. And I was a mortgage advisor at the time, but it was 2008, so it was a bad time to be a mortgage advisor. And so I thought, why not? So we did, and we got sponsorship from Honda, and we set up an off-road school, and then about 5 years down the line, things kind of went wrong with the partnership, that's a very long story short. But we went our separate ways, and I decided then whether to either carry on or rebuild the business without him, or to chase my long-held dream of traveling the world. And by then it was traveling the world by motorbike, but this was a dream that had been with me for a very long time, probably 20 years or so. And so I decided I'm out of here, I'm gone, and off I went. Really, that was it.
So how much time was there between I think I'm going to get out, I'm taking off, I'm going around the world, and when you actually went around the world?
I think I set a date. So I said, right, I'm going to plan for say 3 years time or something ridiculous. And then it was something like 18 months later, I started working with doing a couple of different, I started running a support vehicle driver, running tours with a guy called Nick Sanders across America. And I did a few other jobs along the way. And then just during that time, I was just building up the momentum and planning and getting the big map on the wall and planning my route, and which all went to pot in the end. None of it really sort of came to fruition. It all completely changed, but it was just building that momentum really. And I'd set the date, and so it was probably about 18 months later that they actually set off. And that was probably the scariest part of the journey, because I was just enjoying the planning. It didn't really feel real until I was suddenly in front of 200 people all going, bye, and I'm like, oh, okay, I actually have to do this then. Wow, okay. And it was petrifying. I was terrified, literally terrified. And so that was really the hardest part.
Well, what were you petrified of?
The unknown, I suppose.
Everything.
No, I'm just wondering, were you scared of failure, or are you scared of just the unknown and what's going to happen?
Yeah, all of it. I think the fact that people seem to believe that I thought they thought I knew what I was doing was scary. The fact that I'd been out of the country and traveled before, obviously, quite a bit, but I'd never been on my own out of the country. Even backpacking, I'd always been with someone. Even when I'd run tours and things, I'd always had a team with me. And it's a very different thing to be, even if you're the boss and you've got a team with you, you're still the one in front, but you've got a backup. You've always got backup. When you're suddenly out there on your own, you haven't even got a box around you. You've just got all your possessions on the motorbike. You're there on your own, and you're really throwing yourself at the mercy of the people that you meet. And I've met some interesting characters in my life. I've had a fairly interesting life in the past. I've met people from all walks of life for various reasons, but still, it was a completely new experience, new environments, and a lot of interest in this girl on the motorbike, it was terrifying. Learning to camp on my own, that kind of thing, that was terrifying. It always amazed me in the morning that I was still alive, like, wow, I made it. So there was a lot to be scared of. And yet, actually, what happens is that you develop, you get this positive reinforcement every time you meet somebody and you're terrified and you imagine the worst. The worst doesn't happen. Actually, something completely amazing happens, and they're lovely, and they take you home for dinner, or they fix something, or they, they're all very protective of you. They're warning you of what's to come, and telling you you're going to get raped and murdered in the next country, of course. You know?
Yeah, it's always the next one.
Always the next country.
Ours is fine. It's those other guys.
Yeah, exactly that. And so then you start to sort of develop a bit of a, you know, you stop worrying so much because you think, yeah, I've heard that one before. And you know, and yes, I survived that night. And yes, that sound outside wasn't a big, scary monster. But initially, camping on your own is terrifying. And it takes you back to being a child, scared of what's under the bed. You know, you're... And people say to you, oh, you're so brave. And, you know, wow, look at you doing this. And strong, independent woman, whatever. And you're thinking, I'm absolutely breaking it. And you should see me in my tent. But you do get stronger and you do get used to it. It just becomes what you do. And and people say, I don't know how you do it. But anybody can do it if they do it often enough. It's amazing what can become the norm, you know.
When you step away from what societies, your society in the UK, ours in America, to some extent up in Canada as well, tells you that the danger is out there, the danger is everywhere, the world is so dangerous. When you actually step out into the world and start to move around in it, you realize that that's perception of people that haven't ever been there. And when you actually get out and realize that people, hey, we all have red blood running through our veins, and most people are really pretty decent. Whether they think the way you do about politics or about religion or about this or about that, most people have pretty decent hearts and pretty decent attitudes. And the world ain't a bad place. We're not all that different.
Yeah, and it is the norm that people are nice, not the other way around. And the problem is, of course, you know, the age-old thing of the media only tell the bad news stories, and so that's all we see of the rest of it. And so, you know, it's but you know, one thing I did find was that people's sense of humor. I mean, I can give you one example of a guy I met in Sumatra who was a brilliant guy. We got on immediately. He was a Sumatran man. I was a Welsh girl. You know, he was a good Muslim boy. I'm an atheist. We had nothing in common apart from motorbikes, and we instantly hit it off as if we'd grown up together. We had the same sense of humor. It was spooky in a way because we were so similar. It was just like old mates together, having a giggle, taking the mick out of each other, which is always a good sign if you can take the mick out of someone and, you know, and they can give it back. And that's always, to me, a good sign. And that's what we were like for the whole time I was there. And what I did like about him as well was the fact that he was very unprotective, whereas guys sometimes can be a bit too protective of me, you know, like especially in places like Malaysia. And it's a lovely thing, but it's one thing I love about them, but also a really annoying thing at times, you know. But what I found was that people's sense of humor, regardless of their background or upbringing, was weirdly similar, you know. We laugh at the same things. So yeah, really interesting.
So fart jokes are international. That's what
fart jokes totally international. Yeah,
especially when you're camping. Yeah.
Especially
little tent. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Although that is actually more of a guy thing, the fart joke thing.
It totally is. I don't know why that is, but it is.
I don't know why that is either. I'm always like, oh, you know, why do you?
One of the things that I was thinking about as I was pondering your travels around and your previous background was the fact that for a period of time you were working as a mortgage advisor, basically helping people get planted, helping people accumulate, helping people come up with a whole bunch of stuff in their garage and calling it a successful life. And then you chucked all of this stuff and ended up with a world that sat on the back of your motorcycle. And I was wondering where at some point as you're riding around that sort of hit you with the, hey, life like this is A-okay and life like that may be A-okay, but it isn't, you know. And what you're getting from the minimalist, here I am in the world, versus the planted, there I am in Cardiff in my mortgaged house.
Yeah, do you know, I'd never really looked at it like that before. You're right, I was selling that, wasn't I? And ignoring my own advice. Well, do you know that the mortgage thing for me was all about. I'd had many jobs before that, and many sort of chapters in my life before that, and so the mortgage thing for me was another attempt at growing up. Another attempt at being sort of the responsible adult. And, you know, I had my son fairly young as well. So I'd always decided after a certain point, I decided I was going to be very sort of stable and grounded and provide for my son regardless as a single mother. And I'd had quite a rocky teenage early time in my life, and where I'd sort of got involved in drugs, and I'd got myself into a fair amount of trouble by the time I was about 20. And so I'd gone through all that, and then later on I sort of said, okay, now it's time. Now, and that was actually the time that I decided I wanted to go and see the world and travel and do all that. But in the meantime, I had to figure a way of doing that. You can't just stick the kid in the rucksack and travel off barefooted down and around the world, although that was what I had in my mind at the time. But it turns out I had to actually earn some money and, be responsible. And mortgage advising, as well as I was a human resources manager for a while, and did all sorts of things that made me feel responsible and look grown up and wear the suits. And, I even wore high heels for a while. Which you might not believe now.
No, I wouldn't. Having spent some time around you, Steph, that I'd like to see.
But yeah, and I think that's what it was about for me, was just being the responsible adult. And it just didn't suit me. I just this niggle was always in my head that I wanted to travel, but I also obviously had my son and was bringing him up, and that was an important job. But as soon as he got to 20, it was just like, right, son, I'm off around the world. And that sort of coincided with the business thing all falling apart, and so it was just like, right, now it's now or never. And so, yeah, and I never regretted that. I actually sold my house. I let go of all my worldly possessions, and it really was the minimalist lifestyle. You're living on the road for 4 years. You're living on the road, out of your bags. And I did miss a few things. I missed a fridge. I missed a dressing gown. A pair of slippers occasionally, just at the end of the day when you just get cozy. Mm-hmm. But it was so rewarding that, yeah, it's a difficult thing to let go of, actually. Once you've done it for a while, it's a difficult thing to let go of.
So I was thinking, I've traveled with beaches for extended periods, nothing like what you're talking about, but I know the odd time that when I've come home, I've thought it's nice to be able to, I'm going to go to this store or wherever I'm going to go, I can just go there. I don't have to plan, think, because I know they obviously, they speak English. I know where I'm going. I don't need a GPS. And I thought sometimes it's gotten hard when you're traveling like that, because I'm in a foreign country and let's see, what's the German words I need for this one? Or, what I'm saying? It can be difficult, or if we're in, say, Dominican Republic and Spanish. And so I know some of the languages, but it's hard, right? You're looking at a menu in a restaurant. I got to convert all this. Whereas if I go to a restaurant here, I know all the words. So did you find that at all? Did you, when you're on the road for that long, do you think, geez, if I was home, I don't have to try so hard just for simple tasks?
Yeah, I mean, it is tiring. It is definitely tiring. I didn't realize how tiring maybe until, well, I suppose I had moments of where I felt sheer exhaustion, and that was when I sort of locked myself away in a room and didn't want any kind of stimulation or any kind of anything. Just wanted to rest, and in a dark room with nothing, no beautiful scenery, no anything to think about, because you don't realize how much you're going through. But actually, every day is a new scene, and because of that, you're having to be on high alert almost. You've got to think about everything for yourself. You're on your own, so you've got to think about everything. But also, yes, sometimes you're tired and you just want something nice to eat, and you can't understand the menu, and there's nobody understands you, and you just want a milkshake or something, and you almost want to scream at people for crying out loud, and of course you can't, because you're you put yourself in that position. But it is tiring, and there were definitely times where I'd reached the end of my tether for that day. But all you have to do, and that's what I learned, was just go and rest and give yourself time to recharge, and your perspective changes with that new energy and that new day, and then you can go again. And what I learned that the hard way, because I think I'd got myself to a point of, when I got back onto the mainland after Antarctica, I'd had such a high and had been pushing so long to reach that point, having gone through some fairly difficult countries. You know, when I say difficult, I mean a lot to think about. You know, the noises, the smells, everything's new, the attention from people. You've got to keep on smiling, and everybody wants to know what you're doing. And then after Antarctica, I sort of came down. I felt like I'd come down from a big high. And I was exhausted. I just thought, what am I doing? I'm far from home. I'm tired. I'm never going to get that kind of high again. It was like a post-event blues, you know, and I decided, and then I was like, what should I do? Race home and just get home quickly? But, you know, I'm on a 250cc and I'm, God knows how many miles from home, how fast are you going to go, right? So I thought, that's probably not the answer. So I did. I found myself a very cheap hotel room and I locked myself away and I allowed myself in a really dull town. You know, there was no brochures, there was no beautiful things to go, monuments to go and see or anything. And I locked myself away with a hard drive and some movies, and I kept the curtains closed. and then, you know, a few days, and I said to myself, it's okay. This is okay. You know, you don't have to do anything today. And within a few days, I started to reemerge and found that energy again. And you get over it if you can get work through it or allow yourself to rest. You just have to be kind to yourself, I guess, and then it comes back and you find that. And the thing is, when you get home, you know, and suddenly things aren't changing every day, and you're like, the same people, you know?
How do they do this? How do they do? Well, the thing that I find interesting about traveling to different places, and I think that you'll be able to relate to it, you certainly have there, is the fact that everything is harder. Everything you do is a little harder than it is back home because there's no routine. And routine gives us the coasting along that allows us to relax a little bit under certain circumstances. And that's not happening when we're traveling. And certainly when you're traveling, because you're the center of attention. I understand that as a tour guide, being the center of attention and having to focus on a variety of different things. And when Gretchen and I get done, and Mike certainly knows that, because he's been there between tours, we literally go into hibernation. And, you know, we're not interested in going out. We're not interested in doing much of anything. We don't talk to each other a whole lot because we've been doing it for weeks, like you were when you were there. It's necessary to have that time off. But I had never actually looked at it from the standpoint of all of the new sights and sounds and stimuli that's out there on a natural side of things as being fatiguing and wearing too. The interesting thing that just occurred to me, though, is that the people that don't do that don't get out and travel, have the same sort of stresses and difficulties, but it generally has to do with their job. And they have to come home and rest because the job was just, oh man, work was hell today. And they're doing all of that for someone else. And what you were doing while you were traveling around was all of that stress and aggravation for you. And you walk away from it with a much, much different attitude at the end of the day because it's in you. It's not, that wasn't for the company. That was for me.
Yeah, absolutely. But also for that reason, you do have to sometimes stop and question yourself and say, is this still for me? Is this what I want? Mm-hmm. And especially if you're in a situation where, like me, I was writing a blog and ended up with a lot of people following the journey, and by then all believing in me, you know, as previously it was all, oh yeah, whatever, you know, crazy lady. Now they're starting to believe in you, and as you're going on, you're thinking, you know, who am I doing this for? Is this still for me? And you've got to just check in with yourself and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And I met a lot of people on the road who were tired, who'd had enough, who had, say, done a few months or whatever it was, and had said, you know, I failed because I'm going home and I can't take any more. And I'll say, well, you're not you haven't failed. Nobody's failed because you're there because you want to be there. And if you don't want to be there anymore, then you don't need to be, you know. And so for me, there was never a point where I said, I want to go home, but I did have to keep questioning and saying, why are you putting yourself through this? Or, you know, on the tough days, because there's lots of highs and there's lots of lows, and that's what makes it the adventure. But you have to just keep checking, saying, is this still worth it? Is this what I want? And for me, the answer was always, yes. But yeah, I did have to pull myself out of it occasionally and just get into the metaphorical dressing gown and slippers and chill,
When you started out, did you start out, you mentioned that you laid out your routes and mapped things out and had this grand plan, and it didn't happen to go that way. Was there a point where it turned from I'm going around the world and this is the goal to I'm simply traveling here and just kind of drifting along in life and enjoying it and looking at things differently? Was there because what I think about when I think about that guy on the side of the road saying I failed is he had a goal, or she had a goal and was unable to complete that goal. And yet you traveled around for 4 years and came back contented with the whole concept.
It's an interesting question, actually, because I did always have that goal. I never let go of that goal. And for me, one thing I did learn about myself, but I never set a date, I never set a sort of deadline. I adapted within that goal. So I said, well, it doesn't matter if you don't get home at this time. It doesn't matter if you don't make it to this point or to this point. But I did always have that goal of finishing that journey and that circle. And I would have been very disappointed if I hadn't have finished that. Or, I think I would have been quite hard on myself. But I think for me, that's what kept me going in those hard times was, I think we all need goals. I'm not one of these people, that's what I've learned, is that I'm not one of these people that can just wander around aimlessly without a challenge. Because then how is it measurable? And maybe we're not all like that, but I'm one of these people who likes a to-do list. I like to tick things off at the end of the day and go, job well done, tick. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't all about ticking boxes for me, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing wrong with setting yourself goals and challenges. And that was something that I always wanted to do. And like I said, I did have to keep checking and making sure, was it worth it? But if I hadn't have had that, I probably would have just gone home at times and gone, why am I doing this? Right, I've had enough. But I would go, why am I doing this? I've had enough for today, but I know that I really, in a few days' time or in a couple of weeks' time, I'll feel different and I'll have got that little bit further and I can move on. But goals for me are an important part of my life. So, yeah.
I read that you're trying to arrange an all-girls trip to base camp. Did that happen?
It did. Yeah. And that was completely different kind of a challenge. It was interesting. It was about sort of setting that goal and going for it. But also this time it was about bringing people along with me and helping in a small way. And it was only, my part was only a small part. They had to do it themselves, of course, and they were all up for it. But I don't want to take any credit for that. But what I did want to share with people and maybe encourage people in the first place to get them on board was exactly that, really, the highs and lows and that feeling, just like I was talking about in 2008 when I did that trip in Africa, South Africa, which was a 10-day trip, but actually probably changed my life more than the 4-year trip in the sense that it changed my mentality. It made me realize that at the end of that fear and anxiety and that whole build up towards the trip going, why did I sign up for this? I'm terrified. Oh no. And then getting on it and going, I'm not good enough for this. This is terrible. And then having those few moments of highs and then we're all going to die at the end, having that. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Maybe I'm just crazy, but I think
no, it's real. It's very real for lots of people.
And it's the same for anybody running a marathon or taking on anything, climbing Everest, taking any kind of a challenge. There's always going to be some tough times to reach your goal. And I think if you can see your way through that, that's what gives you that amazing high at the end, is the fact that you saw your way through that and you've learned so much about yourself because, wow, I actually survived and I handled that well, or or whatever. And okay, or even times where you handled it really badly, but you still got through it, that at the end you can go, wow, look at me. And you learn so much about who you are in those situations. And that is worth doing, So yeah.
Cool.
So sorry. Yeah. So was I completely lost track then of what we were talking
back
about.
at the ranch.
So the Everest base camp trip, that's what it was all about. So we took 23 women, was it, to Kathmandu, rode them up onto the Tibetan plateau, through the border, the fairly newly reopened border, rode them up onto the Tibetan plateau, which is stunning. You know, there's so many high mountains up there, it's ridiculous. You know, never mind Everest, there's just hundreds of them higher than any other mountain in the world, and it's just such a wonderful culture up there. Going through the border was probably the weirdest border I've ever been through, because of course we call it Tibet, but the Chinese call it China, and they are still massively in control. So they've only just reopened that border and let us in, but the border was, I mean, amazingly organized, very military precision, but it was, you didn't want to smile or laugh. It was just like, oh, okay, you know. They took our guidebooks and removed our map from within our road books because the map said Tibet. And so they ripped them out of all 25 books. So that was interesting. But once we were in, we had to have a Chinese guide, of course, as well, who was brilliant. He was lovely. And then we rode up to Everest Base Camp. But as most people don't know, there's two base camps. There's one on the Nepal side and one on the Tibet side. The one on the Tibet side has got switchbacks, tar switchbacks all the way up to the base camp, which doesn't sound too challenging, but of course you've got altitude to deal with and cold and all that kind of thing. But probably the most challenging part of the journey, definitely the most challenging part of the journey in the end, was getting up to that border in the first place out of Nepal, because we had horrendous conditions that saw landslides, closed roads, mud, ruts, trucks stuck everywhere on these mountain roads and nowhere around. And it was, it tested us to our limits, that's for sure.
I was following that on a day-to-day basis when you were doing it, and the stuff that you were riding through really and truly was remarkable. Just remarkable garbage.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Gretchen and I were talking about it literally every day. Did you see where they were? Did you see what they ran into? Did you? Yeah, it didn't look like it was any fun at all to that point.
It was, I mean, it had its moments. It was certainly team building. You know, not everybody got through, unfortunately. That first couple of days saw a lot of women either through injury or exhaustion or what, you know, just saying, no, this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. And that was sad. That was a really emotional time, you know, to say goodbye to those women and leave them behind. But for those women who carried on, and it's not the people you think necessarily, you know, you put them all in a line on the first day, and you think, that one might make it, that one might make it, that maybe what, that one, she's not going to make the first day. And actually, you know, you never can tell what people have got in them or whatever, you know, how they're going to handle things until you put them in that situation. And it was really interesting. And like I said, it was a real shame. Some of the women had worked really hard to get to that point, and it was just either through no fault of their own injury or whatever, just couldn't make it to that border. And everything was thrown at us. Nobody could be blamed for turning back.
No, it really was that wild, Mike. It really was.
But once we got over the border into Tibet, it was easy. The actual base camp itself almost was an anticlimax, because we'd gone through so much early on. Mm-hmm. It was almost too easy, you know. But it was beautiful. And you know, yeah, we had after that was when we had a few altitude issues. Nobody got horribly sick, but a few severe headaches, and you know, the doctor was kept very busy keeping us all fit and well and making sure we were okay to carry on. So it was interesting for sure.
So what's coming up? What's in the future?
Well, a lot has been cancelled, obviously. So I did go to Africa in a unimog. That was a completely different challenge.
Yeah, that was a cool story too.
That was a completely different challenge. But it was cool. You know, I got to see Africa on four wheels instead of two. And I had a customer who came trail riding. I do take people trail riding in Wales. And I had a customer who turned up who was 80 years old and could barely walk and worried me. I mean, I say could barely walk. I mean, he just walked very slowly and bent over, you know, but when he got on the bike, there was no drama. He was steady, but he just kept going. And then at the end of it, we ended up in a hurricane that weekend, Hurricane Hannah, I think it was. And so some of the younger guys went, I'm going home. This is too much for me. He kept going. And then at the end of it, he said, thank you for being so patient. It was all really cool. I really enjoyed it. I have a dream. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And and he'd always had this lifelong dream to take his unimog across Africa. And he asked if I would guide him across from south to north. And so we did the first step of that to Kenya, from Namibia down to South Africa and then up to Kenya. And then we left the truck there with the intention of going back in June or July. And unfortunately, that got cancelled. So the truck is still there waiting. And who knows when we'll get back to that. But yeah, it's all an adventure, isn't it? It's all a learning curve. But the thing I learned from him was he was 80 years old and he was still dreaming. He was still dreaming big, you know. He lost most of his sight. He could barely hear anything. So it was terrifying for me when he, because I'd say, "What's that cow?" And he'd go, "What?" You know? I just sort of scream at him. But he did it, and he got through, and never complained. Which I think we can probably all learn something from that, particularly me.
Yeah. I've traveled with a couple of fairly diehard older people, and that's one of the remarkable issues, or one of the remarkable things, is that they're thankful enough that they're there and doing it. They've got enough zest for life that they are doing it, and they do it without complaints. And I've had a couple of experiences with people that I looked at them doing things that were relatively simple, and they were working so hard to do it with still a smile and without an ounce of complaint. And I thought, that's something for me to learn from right there.
Absolutely. I definitely complained more than him on that trip, you know, about my aches and pains and all that kind of thing. And then I'd think, oh, and he was so sympathetic. That was what got me. He wouldn't say, oh, shut up, you know, you're half my age. He would just like, oh, are you okay? And I'd be like, oh no, okay, this is not just stop complaining now, you know.
It seems like I've noticed there's, I don't know, I don't want to render it down to two different types of people in the world, but I'm going to. There's kind of seems to be two different types of people. From what I've seen is, and I have some friends like this, that they're almost looking forward to hitting that age, whatever it be, so they can say, well, I'm too old to do that. And it's, now they've got the cop out, they got the excuse. Well, I travel around the world, but I'm 55 or 65, whatever age they have in their brain that's now too old. So now, well, I can't do that. And then there's the other type of people, like you're saying, who are 80 and they're still, why can't I do that? That's cool. It's probably going to take me longer and it's going to be harder, but whatever. let's get on with it. Let's go have some fun. And it's kind of nice to see that.
I think I was going to say, I think he knew his limitations, actually. I'm not sure he did, or he refused to accept his limitations. And okay, so he realized he needed a bit of extra help. And so there I was. And it worked pretty well, but he still had a bucket list of things to do. You know, he was a man on a mission and had no intention of slowing down, you know. It didn't matter how long it took him as far, you know, as getting things done, but he would get it done. He would get the job done. And he's still got so many things. He has another dream to take some boat somewhere or other. And it sounds absolutely, and he asked if I would help him with that. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to leave that one and stay on dry land. But
yeah, well, it's a good idea if you're not sure where the bow is. That's probably a good idea, Steph.
As previously discussed.
Exactly.
So is there any future plans? You said about your tour and the truck still sitting there. Is that the plan, to go back, continue on your journey in Africa, or it's up in the air right now?
Yeah, it's all up in the air right now. I think the lockdown just sort of basically, you know, it's still everything's any kind of travel is all still so up in the air that it's very difficult to make definite plans. But like I said, I decided about 3 weeks into the thing to just forget it all, not to stress about it, and make the most of it, the time by writing and actually finishing this book, which I never believed I would get finished. So now my last couple of months has just been totally focused on that, and getting it out there, and now promoting it, and now doing the launch, and actually the last week I've spent stuffing envelopes with these pre-orders, and I tell you, it's not glamorous. But it's been great. Again, it's another thing achieved that I was never quite sure I was capable of until it actually happened. So
how is the industry for publishing books, things like that, in this day and age?
It's I've self-published, so I decided to do that because self-publishing, I think, is the way forward at the moment, in the sense of, if you've already got an audience, then why not take the majority of the profit, whereas otherwise publishers will give you small royalties. You can always publish later on, but at the moment, I think the best thing for me to do was to do that. And but there's so much work involved, so many decisions to make, that it just amazed me. I thought, right, once you'd written the book, that was the tough bit. But there's so many decisions to make as to, okay, am I going to be honest and really, really tell it like it is, the good and the bad and the ugly, and the time I, met this guy in this club, or the time that I, or the time that I cried in my tent, or the whatever it was, and I've decided that I have to be me, and there's no point, right? And my history that I mentioned earlier, that's all in there too. And I think it's really important to be honest, or don't bother. This is a very personal book and a very personal journey, and I hope interesting and entertaining for other people. It's not self-absorbed in the sense that it's not all navel gazing and but I think I'm hoping that it's me, it comes across as me and not as some person that I hope to be, and I hope people will relate to that in one way or another, whether they like it or not. I hope it makes them feel something and maybe think twice about something, that they might have had preconceived ideas potentially or whatever. And it was just important to me to get it out there as honestly as possible. And that is terrifying, because I'm thinking, my God, my parents will be reading this, and my grandmother will be, and so it was some tough choices. But then also you've got not only the content, but you've got the cover to think about. You've got, how am I going to get this out there? And so it's been a real stressful journey, but a good one. And I cried when the first books arrived, because it was just like, oh, so much has gone into this. It was, quite a satisfying feeling, and I'm happy with it. So
I'd read years ago that a lot of movie companies, different producers of TV shows and that, they use focus groups, right? So when you make a movie, you might have 3 different endings for it, and you'll get focus groups and show them each one, and how do you feel about it? Are you happy, sad, whatever? And then they'll go with what they think the majority will like. And HBO said never use focus groups. They're going to make the show or the movie the way they think it should be made. And a lot of times people need to be kind of pushed outside their boundaries. Everybody wants the movie to end in a happy ending, all wrapped up in a nice little bow, and the good guy wins, the bad guy gets punished. And they said, but that's not life, right? That's not the way life often works. And
absolutely.
So they try and produce the shows the way the director, whoever, what his vision was, and it usually works. They win a ton of awards, and I think they've kind of pushed the industry that way. So just saying about your book, you got to kind of make it in your vision, what you thought it was going to be. Hopefully it's a success, but
and that's the thing as well. You're thinking, who am I writing it for? Who's my audience? And I'm thinking, well, that doesn't really matter. In my case, it's about me. I'm not making this up. So, but then you feel you have almost a responsibility. And so, like, I've had so many people come up to me and saying, male bikers, for example, come up to me saying, you're such an inspiration to I've told my daughter all about you. I want her to follow in your footsteps, or to, and I want her to see that the world is a great place and all this. And I hope that does come across in the book. But also, I'm going to buy the book for my daughter. And I'm thinking, well, there's swearing in there. There's just me talking about, it's not a wholesome book. It's just a matter of fact. This is it, and it warts and all. And so that was a worry. It's like, well, oh, crikey. But again, it had to be written as it was for me, in the sense of, I didn't want to flour it up or wash it down too much. And so I'm hoping it'll not offend too many people and just enlighten some people and just entertain others, so.
The key is to offend just the right amount of people. That's why I found in life. It's offending. Sometimes I overbuy on that, but
yes, absolutely. People need to get over it, and that's what I decided is that. I mean, it's not truly. We're not talking like really offensive here, but I think for anybody, I hope. But it is very honest and out there, and it's just like, well, like it or not, this is the story, and you have to, as a writer, you have to make that decision to do that. Otherwise you're trying to please everybody. You can't please everybody. But in writing an honest book, you are going to potentially upset maybe a couple of people in your chosen word or your actions or whatever, but as long as you're happy and proud to be out there and be yourself, and that's taken me a long time to be able to do that and say, hey, actually this is not for me. People were holding me up and kept saying, well done, how brilliant, with what you've done, you've ridden around the world, as if I was some kind of hero almost, and that's maybe not the right word, is it? But people were kind of holding me up on a pedestal, and I felt like, well, you don't know all of the story, and I think it's important for people to understand the full story of who I am, but so they can judge without. I don't want them just to know the good bits. I want them to know all of it, and then they can judge. And I'm happy with who I am, and it's taken me a long time to get to that point. Really, this is all sounding very deep, but it was kind of an important thing for me to do that and say, hey, maybe I've gone too far.
Well, it's either fiction or it's nonfiction. Those are the only two ways that you can write it, right? But it is important to put things in context and not simply, I think, the how you got there and what you were overcoming from life as we know it. To get out and do the traveling and make the change is really important, because otherwise it's as though that's a singular thing, and that's not. It's not a singular thing. It was 4 years of your life.
Yeah.
Plus the trip to Tibet, and plus everything that you've got coming up, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's not something that happened on a pedestal. It's something that's a long hill.
Yeah.
It was quite a climb. So
yeah. And it was, and without that sort of honesty about the background and about things that happened along the way, then there's no depth to it and to my decision making, and maybe an understanding of why I chose to do that or this, or so it was an important part of the story.
Yep. Excellent. Well, we wish you great luck on the sales on that. We will definitely add the links to the podcast bit so that people can get it, because it's just a heck of a story.
Thank you very much.
Well, we can wrap this up. Maybe I've got a few lightning questions I've come up with.
Oh, we have a lightning round?
Lightning round.
Sparky is going to ask his lightning questions.
Okay, bring it on.
Okay. Mods or rockers?
Rockers, obviously.
Obviously. I have no idea.
Yeah. For those of us that aren't in the UK, it's...
Fish and chips or curry?
Fish and chips.
Too hot or too cold?
Both.
Mongolian yurt or African hostel?
Yurt.
South Pole or North Pole?
South.
Jungle or desert?
Oh, jungle.
Do you have an adventure traveler you follow on YouTube or anything?
No.
No problem.
I can think of.
Tunnel or ferry?
Tunnel, definitely.
Okay, and your favorite motorcycle podcast?
What's this one called again, Rob? Don't do it again.
No, I think that works.
Okay, good.
Cool. Well, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Well, Steph, thanks so much for coming online here and joining us for a great conversation. It was really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to you and seeing you again. The rest of you that are listening to this don't get the video, but she's charming.
It's been great to see you too. Really lovely to see your face again.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish you the best of luck with your book and hope it sells 1 million copies.
Yeah.
Well, I should be so lucky, but thank you. You never know, eh? You never know. You got to be in it to win it.
Exactly. All right. And Mike, you've kind of got yourself in the middle of that house build and your hands are a little full.
Yeah, lots going on right now. So I'm proposing, why don't we take about a 2-week break? It'll give time for our listeners to catch up on all the podcasts if they're not already caught up. I'm really thinking of them, not me.
I think that's an excellent idea, Mike. I think that's an excellent idea. We should take a couple of weeks off.
That's what I'm going to be doing, catching up on all those podcasts.
Perfect.
Very good stuff.
Okay, everybody. We'll be talking to you in a few weeks then.
Roger that. Go well, Mike. Go well, Steph. And all the rest of you that are listening, hope your next 2 weeks are great. Ciao for now.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. Cheers, guys. Take care. And I wouldn't, the way I got to, oh, sorry about this, hang on.
If that's for me, I'm not here.
Hello? Hi, Charles, look, I'm just in the middle of a podcast. Can I call you back? Oh, no worries, bye.
We're totally putting that at the end of this.
Yeah.
I thought, how do I switch it off without, that's like a landline. I don't know how to deal with landline. You can't mute them.